so we're going to be looking at our final standard here for Unit 5 is writing equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. Okay, so we'll start first with looking at parallel. Okay, so we've got a couple equations there, y equals 2x plus 3, y equals 2x minus 1. They're both written in slope-intercept form. Okay, so I'm going to graph those, and again, just a quick review, slope-intercept form. All right, y equals mx plus b. Okay, so that's our y-intercept, and m is our slope. Okay, so when we graph that, we first graph our y-intercept. So my first one, my y-intercept is at positive 3, and my slope is positive 2. Okay, which is 2 over 1. So I'd want to count up 2 and right 1. Okay, and so on, right? And then we can graph that, and I'll use my straight edge here. Okay. So my graph would look like that. Okay. Let me switch colors here quick and graph the second one. So we've got y equals 2x minus 1. So your y-intercept is at negative 1. And you'll notice the slope is the same. It's still 2. So I'm going to count up 2, right 1. Okay. Again, let me use my straight edge. Right there. There we go. Okay, and it looks like that. So what do you notice about these lines and equations? So what we want you to see here is that they have the same slope. Okay, the steepness of the two lines is the same, and we know we get the steepness of a line by measuring the slope. So the slope is equal. Okay, and they are parallel to each other. Remember, parallel. Think of like train tracks, right? They go in the same direction. They don't intersect. They're on the same plane. So you got two lines on the same XY coordinate plane there that are never going to intersect. Okay, so they're parallel. So when we have parallel lines, essentially what happens is your slope is equal. We can have different y-intercepts. We can see that with our two graphs. The y-intercepts are different, but the slopes are the same. That creates two parallel lines. Okay. And this thing's going to be difficult. Come on now. Okay. So looking at our notes here, blank lines have the blank slope. Okay, so what we're looking for is parallel lines have the same slope. Okay. All right. So what should we do to write an equation for a parallel line to the given equation? All right. So if I want to write a parallel line there, right, I'm going to keep the slope the same. I'm just going to change the y-intercept, right? So I could have y equals 4x plus 2, for example. Y equals negative 3x minus 1. Y equals 2/3 x plus 4. Okay. Again, the slopes stay the same. I've just changed what my y-intercept is. Now this one, we want to get into slope-intercept form first, right? Because we got to know what that slope is. So I move my 4x over to the other side with subtraction, and then divide everything by 3. So I'd have y equals negative 4/3 x plus 2. So if I want a line parallel to that, I just need to keep the slope the same. So y equals negative 4/3 x. I can do like minus 5 or something like that. Okay, so parallel lines have the same slope. Okay, and unless they're on top of each other, unless they're the same line, they're going to have different y-intercepts. All right, so what should we do to write an equation for a line parallel to the equation given that passes through the point listed? So we have an equation, we want a line that's parallel that goes through that point, right? So again, the slope's going to stay the same, right? So we know it's going to be y equals 3x. We've got to figure out that y-intercept, okay? Remember, y equals mx plus b. We know the slope. We know the x value. We know the y value. We're going to solve for b, okay? So we just want to plug in our y value is negative 5, okay, equals 3 times x, so 3 times negative 3 plus b. Okay, and we just want to go through and solve that. So that's negative 9 plus b add 9 to both sides. So 4 would be equal to b. So we know our slope has to be the same. So our slope is 3. So y equals 3x. Our y-intercept is going to be positive 4, so plus 4. Okay? All right, same idea with the next one, right? We know our slope. We have an x value and a y value. So your y value is negative 4. Your slope is negative 8. Your x value is 1. Solving for b. Okay, so we simplify that and then add 8 to both sides. So 4 is equal to b again. So your equation would be y equals negative 8x. Again, the slope stays the same, plus 4. Okay. All right. So I would suggest if you're watching this, we work through these next 4, I would just pause it, try it yourself, and then unpause it and see if you get the correct answer here. So, okay, next one. Again, y value is 1 equals negative 1/4 times your x value plus b. 1 equals negative 1/4 times negative 4 would be 1. Okay, and subtract 1 from both sides, so 0 would be your y-intercept. So we would just write y equals negative 1/4 x. Don't need to put the plus 0 because it doesn't change the value. Just get that, right? Slope's the same. New y-intercept. Because it's 0, we don't put it. Okay. Next one. Y value is 5. X value is also 5 plus b. So I'd have 5 equals 4 plus b. So your b would end up being 1. So your equation then becomes y equals 4/5 x. Again, the slope doesn't change. Plus 1, your new y-intercept. All right. Next one. Let's go ahead and get this in slope-intercept form first. So I'm going to move the 6x over because we have to figure out what our slope is. So 2y equals negative 6x plus 8. Divide everything by 2. Y would be negative 3x plus 4. So now I know my slope. Okay, I can plug my numbers in to figure out my y-intercept. So my y value is positive 2. My slope's negative 3. My x value is negative 2. Again, we're getting that from our coordinate there. Plus b. Okay, so that's positive 6. And when we subtract 6, we get negative 4 is equal to b. So your equation would be y equals your slope, which is negative 3x. Y-intercept is negative 4, so minus 4. Okay. And last one, again, put it in slope-intercept form. So let's move the x to the other side. So I'd have 4y is equal to negative x minus 16, and divide everything by 4. Okay, so that cancels that out. Turns it into 1y. And again, remember, if there's no number in front of the x, that's like having having a 1. So we have negative 1/4 x minus 4. So we know our slope now. Let's figure out our y-intercept, right? So plug your numbers in. Y value is negative 3. Negative 1/4. Your x value is negative 4. And we're solving for b. Simplify that. That's positive 1. Take away 1 from both sides. Negative 4 would be equal to b. So your equation would be y equals your slope of negative 1/4 x minus 4. Okay. So it turns out, oops, there you go away, that our line here in that point is going to go through that line. So you end up with the same line, right? You can see that there. There's our original. There's our 1. So it's the same line. All right. So again, parallel lines, they have the same slope. They're just going to have different y-intercepts, right? So figure out what your slope is. Sometimes it's already in slope-intercept form. Like our last couple, it's not. Okay. And then plug your x and your y value in to solve for your new y-intercept, right? And then rewrite your equation. Okay. All right. Part 2. Okay. Let's go ahead and graph these again. So now you notice they're not going to be parallel because the slopes are different. I've got 2 and I've got negative 1/2. All right, so let's go ahead and graph these quick. So y-intercept of 3, slope of 2, so up 2 and over 1. I'll do a couple of dots here. Use my ruler to get that straight. Oops. There we go. So put my straight line, put my arrows on. Let me switch colors here. Purple. And then -1 is my y-intercept. And -1/2. So down 1, right 2. Or I could go up 1 and left 2. Right. Again, let me use my ruler to get that straight. Like so. Okay. All right. Now, what do you notice? Okay. Obviously, they're not parallel. Okay. If we look at that angle, right, we get a 90-degree angle there, right? Okay. So those are perpendicular. Oops, I wrote a little big. Perpendicular, right? Angles that intersect at 90-degree angles. Okay, now if we look at their slopes, right? My first slope is 2, or 2 over 1. My second slope is -1/2. All right. First off, the first one is positive, the second one's negative. And that should make sense. If one's going upward, if I want to get it perpendicular, I have to have the other one going downward. So perpendicular lines have opposite, meaning one's positive, the other's negative, or vice versa. And then I flipped around the numerator and the denominator, right? My black line is really steep. It's got more rise compared to run, up 2 over 1. Okay. To get it perpendicular, it has to be flipped, right? I can't have the other one also be steep. It has to be less steep. So for every 1 I move vertically, I move 2 horizontally. So we call those reciprocals, right? So it's the opposite reciprocal. Okay. So parallel, they're the same. Perpendicular, they've got to flip to the opposite. So negative to positive or vice versa. And reciprocal, flip the rise and the run around. Okay. So if I wanted a line perpendicular to the given equation, okay, my new slope, so I have +4, would be negative, so opposite, reciprocal, 1/4. And then I could do like +2 or something like that. Okay. This one, opposite reciprocal, so it would become positive, and then 1 over 3 becomes 3 over 1, so positive 3x. Okay, I can just pick a new y-intercept. This one would become -4 over 3. And this one, again, if I need to get it in slope-intercept form, so subtract 4x. So 2y would equal -4x plus 10, and divide by 2. So I'd have y equals -2x plus 5. So if I wanted a perpendicular line, I'd have positive, and 2 would become 1/2, so opposite reciprocal, and then just a new y-intercept. Okay? So again, perpendicular, the slope changes to its opposite, meaning positive to negative or negative to positive, and reciprocal, we flip the rise and the run around. So 4 over 1 becomes 1 over 4. 3 over 4 becomes 4 over 3, and so on. All right. If we flip to the last page here of your note packet for Unit 5. Okay. So again, we want to write a perpendicular line through the given point listed. So I want a line perpendicular to y equals -3x plus 1 that goes through the point 3, -1. Right? So my slope, right, is -3 is my original slope. So I'm going to make that the opposite reciprocal. So that's +1/3. So that's going to be my new slope. Right? And then again, just replace your x and your y value with the given point. So my y value is -1 equals 1/3 times x. Oops, I'll just put in parentheses times 3 plus b. We're trying to solve for our y-intercept. Okay. So 1/3 times 3 is 1. If I take away 1 from both sides, I get -2. So my equation would be y equals 1/3 x minus 2. Okay, that's my solution. All right. So we'll work through the rest. Again, I recommend do one, pause the video, try it. Okay, unpause it, check your answer, see if you did it correctly. Okay. All right, next one. Again, my y value is 3. Okay, opposite reciprocal, so 1/4 would become -4 times my x value, which is -1 plus b, and then solve through that. So -4 times -1 is +4. And if I take away 4, I end up with -1 is equal to b. So my equation would be y equals -4x. Again, that opposite reciprocal slope minus 1. Okay. All right, next one. Again, my y value there is 3. So 3 equals opposite reciprocal, so +2/5 times my x value of -5 plus b. Solve for b. So that would be -2. Again, the shortcut there, right? Cross that out, divide by 5. Divide by 5, that makes that -1. So 2 times -1 is -2. Okay. And then add 2 to both sides. So my y-intercept, my b value is 5. So I'd have y equals 2/5 x plus 5. Okay. All right. Next one. Y value is 4 equals my slope -10 becomes +1/10 times -5 plus b. Okay. -1/10 times 5. Right? Again, divide both sides by 5, so that becomes 2. That becomes -1. So I end up with -1/2 plus b. And I'm going to add a half to both sides. So I end up with 4.5 or 9/2 you could also use. Okay. Equals b. So my equation would be y equals my slope of +1/10 x plus 4.5 or 9/2. All right. And then the last couple here, these are not in slope-intercept form, so we have to do that first, right? We've got to figure out what that slope is. Okay, don't plug your x and your y in yet because we don't know what the slope is, and it's not in slope-intercept form. So move my 4x over. So 2y equals -4x minus 6. Divide by 2. So y would be -2x minus 3. So I know my slope. My slope is -2, so its opposite reciprocal is +1/2. Now I can plug my numbers in. Right? My y value is -1. Again, my slope is going to change from -2 to +1/2. My x value is -4. Okay, solving for b. Or 1/2 of -4 is -2. Add 2 to both sides. And 1 would be equal to b. So I know my y value. I know my y-intercept. So y equals, your slope is 1/2. Right, again, opposite reciprocal of -2. X, y-intercept is +1. Okay, so there is your equation. And the last one, again, get it in the slope-intercept form. So we'll move the 5x over. Subtraction. -3y equals -5x minus 9. Divide everything by -3. So I would have y is equal to 5/3 x plus 3 as my original equation. Okay. Now we can solve for our b. So I'm going to plug in my x and y value. So my y value is -2 equals, our slope is going to be that opposite reciprocal. So -3/5. Okay. Flip the rise and the run, make it negative since it's positive. So -3/5 times my x value of -3 plus b. Okay, and go through and solve for b. So -2 equals negative times a negative is positive, so that's 9/5 plus b. Okay, so I'm going to subtract 9/5. All right, now this might, if you're struggling a little bit with this, remember -2. If I make it in fifths, is negative 10 fifths. If I take away 9 fifths, okay, that's negative 19 fifths. Okay, so that's my b value. Okay. Right. And then finally, we want to write our equation. So y equals our slope, right? Our slope is negative 3 fifths. So you can see there's some stuff to keep track of if you feel like you don't have room here, right? Use another piece of paper, right? But you got to be organized with what you're doing because there's a lot of stuff going on here. So my slope is negative 3 fifths, and my y-intercept is negative 19 fifths. So minus, oops, so I forgot to put my x in there. Negative 3 fifths x minus 19 fifths. Okay, so perpendicular. Again, perpendicular, the slope ends up being the opposite reciprocal. Parallel, they're the same because they're going in the same direction with the same steepness. Okay, perpendicular, they've got to go in opposite directions, and a steep line has to be followed with a not steep line. So it's opposite reciprocal. Okay, to find the new line, right, we adjust our slope with the opposite reciprocal, plug your x and your y value in, and solve for b, right? And then we rewrite the equation, right? Be organized with your work, show your steps, okay? This is not 1 or 2 steps we write down and do the rest in our head. There's way too much stuff to keep track of, so show your steps, and then, just keep yourself organized. You should be fine.